All right. Looks like we are online and ready to go. So, going better than yesterday. Greetings and welcome to part two of building a website from scratch. My name is Aaron Craig with Beyond Us Games, and I'm super excited. Last night I got some stuff figured out and got the website launched. So if you're looking to see when I'm going to be live streaming more often, you can check out my schedule. You can just look at beyondusgames.com/schedule or follow the link up top here. So it's on here. I'm going to be I think my goal is to have it updated every week so you can kind of see what you want to do for that week and if you want to join me there. But the whole website is up and running, which I'm super excited about, so definitely check that out. Okay, we left off yesterday. We got, let's see, not really anywhere in the actual process of developing the website. I think we spent most of the time going over what CSS and HTML and a little bit about what Bootstrap is. So that's totally cool. We have a little bit to work on, and I think now we can kind of get started. We ended with looking at some different websites, some of the, I guess, best websites that some website had rated, and some of them were kind of cool, some of them were okay. They weren't really LO plays. They weren't really what I was going for, because I want this to be a much more simple website, and so I think what I'll do is kind of just start and see how it goes, because once I get a template, it's easier for me to be able to move things around than having to like imagine it all in my head. A lot of people can do that, and it's one of the techniques for that is actually called wireframing, which I will talk about eventually, but I'm not great at that. I like to actually have things in place and see them, so that's what I'm going to do. So the first thing that I want to do is get a navigation system in place, and I'm just going to go with a default one. So I'm going to go and look up Bootstrap for Navbar, and that's what it's called, is a navbar for navigation. So I'm going to go click on latest 4.1 because that's what we are using, and then have to research Navbar again because that's what that did. Okay, so here on their page, they have a lot of pre-coded and pre-set up things, and a lot of the navbar we wouldn't be able to do with just HTML and CSS because they use a lot of JavaScript in the behind the scenes, and that's totally fine for what we want to do because we can change everything about the navbar with just HTML and CSS. We don't have to understand how their JavaScript is working to be able to use it. But just know that JavaScript is an actual coding and programming language, whereas HTML and CSS is more like a design and markup language. So JavaScript is actual. I don't want to actually say actual, but one of them is a programming language. One of them is a programming language, and the other two are like markup languages. So JavaScript has the power to do pretty much anything you can imagine, and they use it to integrate into these navbars, which is really cool. So they have drop-down menus, they can implement search bars and buttons and features and stuff like that. So it's really cool. So we just have to find one that we want to do. And nope, not yet. I just started, well, like 2 minutes ago, I guess, and I didn't put out much notice about this one. So I don't expect too many people, but you know, if more people show up, then that's great. So we just need to pick a navbar, and that's about it, and then we can go from there. The one that I have gone to mostly have been this like darker featured navbar, and I've mostly used the one at the very bottom here, which allows you to you can start with content already collapsed if you want, or you can have one that this will happen automatically when you resize your screen, and I can show you that. It's pretty cool. But I think we'll just choose one that is very basic. We'll have to take out some of the stuff. Yeah, we'll go ahead and take this one right here. So this navbar is what I want to do. I'm going to go ahead and copy all of this code right here, and we can just put it inside of, oop, that's the wrong project. We can put it inside of our project right here. So inside of the body tag is where we're going to want to put it, and it's going to be the very first thing because it needs to be at the very top. So we're going to say Bootstrap 4.1 Navbar. And then I'm just going to paste that inside of there, and that gives us all of that stuff right there. I'm going to go ahead and put another thing right there just to have it be isolated and we know exactly where it's at. So I'll save that, and then we can view how that looks on here. So that gives us a nav bar for our website. Now, none of it is functioning yet, but this is a great place. And Aram, I do actually, yeah. GameMaker is what I started with, and I'm still doing that. This live stream is specifically for web development, but I have one coming on at 1:30 that I'm doing a live stream of making a top-down shooter, and you can just search through my YouTube videos because I have a lot of tutorials on there. So you can check those out, and if you want, check out that live stream and help create a top-down shooter, which is really cool. So, but I'm getting more into website development and software development just in general, trying to do both of those things at the same time. So we'll see how that goes. Alright, so we don't need necessarily all of this, but I think for now we can kind of keep it in there. Although one thing to note is that this drop-down link isn't working properly. And what that probably means is that some of our JavaScript is not in the right place. So I think that this first script specifically might need to go into our header. Let's save that, and then let's try reloading this. I'm going to go ahead and cancel this port, and then go live. Okay, so the drop-down link still doesn't work. And it should be working because we don't need to have anything besides Bootstrap installed on here. So I'm going to open up... Okay. So we've got their jQuery. We've got all of their stuff installed. Make sure it's all in the same order that we saw yesterday on their website, because I did change the order a little bit. So let's see if that's part of the problem. Okay. Alright, so the drop-down link still isn't working, so let's go ahead and make sure that we get that up and running correctly. So, CSS, jQuery, yep. Alright, let's see. So if we copy... Okay, so here's this... Alright, I'm going to try copying all of this and putting it back into our project and seeing if that is what we needed to do. So I'm going to... The CSS definitely goes up here. Let's see if this is the correct thing. Yeah, so that was the same thing. That makes sense. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this because I don't believe scripts go in head at all. And then we're going to come down here to these scripts. I'm going to go ahead and delete both of them. Alright, so that's the CSS. The complete JavaScript for HTML is right here. So I'll copy that, paste that one in, and then I will copy this one and paste that one in there. Save both. And it doesn't say we need anything else, so we should be good. We go ahead and go live again. And we still get nothing. Interesting. So our navbar is just copy and pasted directly from Bootstrap, so we shouldn't be having any issues, but sometimes they come up anyway. And this is a big part of what I want to do live, is actually figure out what's going on and what's working and what isn't working. So, you know, that's kind of what we're doing right here. So I'm going to try copying a different section of code that also has a drop-down menu. Eliminate the possibility that it's on their end, because I suppose it's possible, but it's highly unlikely. Yeah. So we're still not getting anything from that. Okay. Interesting. Well, I'm going to see if I can find my old project that I had, because it had Bootstrap working properly inside of there. Let's see. Oop, that's not what I want. Let's open... Okay, so here is the old one. I'm going to go ahead and copy this directly from here and drop it into our new one. Okay, so jQuery has to be first, so there's a specific order, and we might have had that in the wrong order. So let's go ahead and see. Yeah, that would be the problem. We needed to have 3 scripts that we had, but they needed to be in a specific order because each one relies on the one before it. So if we didn't have that, then we had a problem. So we need to have our jQuery first. So you can see here that it says jQuery, then you have Popper, and then you have the Bootstrap.js. So make sure that they're in that order, and then you should be good to go for following and getting this set up. Okay, so that gives us now a working navbar with drop-downs, and this has a disabled part, and we don't need all of this functionality, so let's go ahead and modify our navbar. So the way we can check that out, we can look directly in the code if we want to, and that can definitely work, but if you're not totally familiar with the code yet, it might be kind of confusing at first. I know exactly where to look because I've edited these specifically, but if you don't know, one of the things that you can do is use the developer tool. You can come in here and you can click on this button and just hover over whatever element you're looking for and click on it, and then inside of the code, all of your code is right here in the inspector. It tells you exactly where it is. So this is a button, and this is the search bar is an input, and this whole thing is in a form. So if we were to delete this entire form, we'd get rid of that entire right hand side, and that's what I want to do. So we come down, look at the bottom, here's a form, delete it, and then you can see that it is now gone. And I also don't want this disabled portion in here because we don't need a disabled button. Come down here, we can see that it is an anchor, and LI is a list item, so we can see that this is an anchor inside of a list item, and they are all list items inside of a UL, which is an unordered list. So when you want to list things on the internet, you can do it in an unordered fashion or an ordered fashion, OL and UL. And both of them are lists, and you can actually customize them to be exactly the same if you wanted to, but there are certain qualities about an ordered list versus an unordered list, but that's not really important right now. So we're going to go ahead and delete this disabled button. So we can come down here and actually look for the text disabled because that's what's being displayed. So we can just delete that entire section. So we delete this tag of LI and everything in between it, and then it goes away. And the drop down works, and we have several links right here. So these links can be for anything. They can be links to other websites. They can be links to other pages in this website, or they can also be links to different sections on this page. I'm sure you've seen where you click on something and it like auto scrolls you down, or it jumps you to another section on that page when it's one really long website. That's something that you can also do. Those are all things that a link can do for you. So that gives us our navbar though. Let's go ahead and let's come up with a fictional name for our company. Let's say what do we want to do? The first thing that comes to mind is someone that sells bananas, but that doesn't really make any sense. I'm thinking that the best way to build this would be from a perspective of like a fake company, and they want to have a web page, a website that you can see all like about their company and all their stuff. Like when you scroll down, then all of that works. So just have to come up with a name of something, and it really isn't too important. So let's go with something. I'm looking around my environment to get an ideas. Something that we could also find like images for really easy. Man, I'm really bad with coming up with names just on the spot. I should have thought about this beforehand. Let's see. If I find like a... Let's do this. Let's do a business name generator. I don't want to enter a query. Okay. Let's put in the word cool. So our business name will have something cool in it. Just need, or let's do tech. Ooh, cyberspace tech. I don't want to actually license my name. Let's do cyberspace tech. That sounds cool. And we can do a lot of stuff with that. Cyberspace tech. So that is the Navbar brand. Inside of Bootstrap, their Navbar specifically has classes for like the brand. So you could also add your a logo here, and that would, you can also add, make an image, a link, an anchor. That would be fine too. But what we'll do is have the name of the company be right there, Cyberspace Tech. That sounds cool. And because I've done a lot of websites recently that have the menu navigation just like this, including my own, I'm going to go ahead and move all of this stuff over to the right. And the way that we can do that is by using a float utility. So there are a lot of styling things that you can do when it comes to HTML and CSS. There's a lot of attributes that you can apply to them. So when it comes to where you want things on the page, one of the ways that you can do it is using something called float. Float is the idea of, do you want it to go left, right, or middle? And basically it takes all of the extra space that it would have, and it moves it to the other side. So you can see here that here's a float left, here's a float right, and this is don't float on all viewport. Yeah, I'm not sure what that's doing there. But these are Bootstrap classes that we can put on anything and to make them float a certain direction. So if we want our navbar to float right, we're going to find the section with all of the other anchors and tags in there, which is right here. This div is for the rest of our navbar. So these three things right there. And I'm going to go ahead and add a class that there's already a class attribute inside of here. I'm just going to say float right and have it do nothing, which is a very common thing when you are designing, is having your code not do anything because you don't put it in the right spot or it doesn't work exactly the way you think. So let's go ahead and figure out why it's not working, because if we're floating right, that should work, but we may actually want to float right on the unordered list instead. So we'll try that. We'll float right here. We'll see. So that doesn't work either. Okay. So let's go ahead and do a quick search. Navbar float. So we'll look in Navbar and I'll actually do a search within the page itself. Maybe. I'm used to using Google Chrome, and for whatever reason it oh, find in page is down here. For whatever reason Mozilla Firefox is my default, so let's look up float. So it doesn't look like there is no float that they use right on here. So let's go ahead and play around with it inside of our web tools. So what we can try is using tools inside of here to see if we can just have it change automatically. So this is the div, this is the navbar, and you can see that it's all right there. So what we want to take is these and put them on the right. But float right didn't work, and we don't know exactly why. So we have to check out and see what went wrong. Now, there's already a lot of code inside of here, a lot of Bootstrap CSS that is playing, and you can see that because it has a class of navbar, it has all of these properties. Because it has a class of navbar collapse, it has all of these properties. So there's a lot of things in there that are already intermingling with it, and that can make designing it more difficult because it's not straightforward. It's not all of your code and you just have to change something. There's a lot of stuff already playing in there, and that's okay. We can play around with that. We just have to be willing to experiment. So in CSS, you can imagine that there's an attribute called float, and it was there. So float is an attribute that we can actually put inside of CSS, and this element tag allows us to type in CSS directly. So if I put float right, I can see that it doesn't do anything. So for whatever reason, my float doesn't do anything. But if we try taking off some of these other attributes, one of them might do something specifically for that. So I'm going to try just taking some of these off, but it doesn't look like any of those are what we're looking for. None of them are contradicting our float. Because if we put up here something that isn't going to work, like let's say down here there's align items center. If we put in align items in here and we say right, you can see that it gets crossed out, and it tells us that, well, it's an invalid property for one, but let's say, okay, so this align items is now being used over this one. If you have multiple properties, only one of them can work. So you can't have multiples of the same one and have them both affect it. So if I take this one off, that one comes on, and so on and so forth. So that's something to keep in mind as well. If your CSS inside of here is like crossed out in the developer tools, then somewhere else, probably Bootstrap, is overriding that somehow. So keep that in mind. Now there's other ways to put things over to the right. So there's align content, and let's try putting that at the end, and that doesn't do anything. What about align items? Put that at the end. No, that doesn't do anything either. So none of those seem to work. Let's go ahead and do a quick search. Bootstrap for navbar float right. So there's first thing comes up is Stack Overflow. So I'm going to check the question, how do I align items to the right? That's exactly what I want to do. The code is pretty much the same thing that I have, and here's the first answer. Float right won't work because navbar is now flexbox. We don't need to know exactly what that means, but it tells you that you can't work. So what we can do is use the new MR Auto, which stands for margin right. And if we come back and look at our developer tools, there are margins, borders, padding, and then the actual element itself. And if you want to see an example of margin versus padding, we can come in here and actually change this. So padding is inside of the element itself. So if I add a padding of 100 to this, we can see that, this now has a padding of 100 up here. So this space is not going to be able to be filled with anything else. And we can see that more easily, I think, by coming in here, putting a padding of 100 on there. See, this div, this item, is still has that background because the padding is part of that item. But if we were to change the margin is part of the item, but it's part of the outside of the item. So things that, like background and border, are not affected by it. So you can see that margin and padding are two different things, and for the longest time, and even sometimes still, I didn't understand exactly what the difference was, so don't feel bad, and just keep in mind that margin and padding are both very important, and what we're going to do right here is set margin right auto. So let's give that a try, because that's a good idea. So we see that it's already inside of here, margin right auto. So we're going to go ahead and let's do margin right auto, do his first suggestion, and see if that works. Okay, so that didn't do anything. Let's try margin left auto. And that doesn't do anything. But we might also be in the wrong spot. So let's go back and take a look and see exactly where he put this. So the UL class margin right auto could be used on the second right navbar nav. Okay. Alright, so we need to use margin left auto, and I think we need to put it here, change the margin right auto to margin left on this unordered list. And then, there we go. So it automatically knows exactly how much margin to put in there, and it does that. And the reason for that, the auto portion, is because when we change it to a different design mode, you can see here that now this is in like a mobile view, and this it knows exactly how much to put in there. So we can increase this a little bit, and this is using CSS in a really cool way. But the margin left auto will automatically keep this whole space margined. So you can see that it's always on the right, and when it comes to a certain size, then it comes down to a drop-down menu, which is really, really handy. So you don't have to worry about coding that at all. It's responsive to both large screens and small screens, which is awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and change that back. But that gives us on the right. Now the only problem would be that the drop-down menu actually comes off the screen. So what we're going to do is actually move the drop-down menu over one. So we'll find the drop-down menu, and you can find it by classes. Like here's drop-down, here's the list item that says drop-down. So I'm going to take this whole list item section and put it in front of just this link. So we'll save that, shift tab that back. I think it's a little too far forward, and there we go. So if you have a really long one, it might still be too long, and I think we actually we don't necessarily need home on there, but whatever, we'll leave it for now. That gives us the name of our company on the left and everything else on the right, which is great. You can see these even have little hover effects that are built in, so that's pretty cool. Okay, so I'm getting this idea for what I want to do now. I think what we'll do is a website about cyberspace tech that is like, futuristic tech, either in actual space or probably cyberspace, which would be the internet. So I think we'll do like kind of a scrolling page that will allow us to like showcase whole sections devoted to this, and we'll put in some filler text as well. And I'll show you a cool tool for putting in filler text inside of Visual Studio Code. So to do that, what we want to do is fill up whole sections with divs. So we talked about divs, and they are kind of useless by themselves, but if we give them a specific amount of height and tell them to take up the whole screen, then they'll look really cool. So we'll go ahead and give this a try. Now, using Bootstrap, there's a lot that you have to know about how Bootstrap works exactly. And they use something called Flexbox, which I'm going to try and explain here and do my best, because when I started using Bootstrap, it was entirely confusing until something finally clicked. And that's a lot of times how it works, is when you're coding something, especially when it's new, it just doesn't make any sense until all of a sudden it does. And so if you know anything about Bootstrap and you want to start using it, hopefully I can help make that click happen. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this inside of here. And we're going to see, I'm going to first go to, let's see if they have a good example that is maybe visual for everyone who learns better visually. Okay. So I think this makes sense. So what we're going to be doing is doing horizontal stacking and then setting up the actual vertical size ourselves, either by the images that we put in there or the amount of text that we have. So Bootstrap allows you to basically turn the entire width of whatever you're viewing into into a row, and then you can set different column sizes. So imagine that this whole section here is one row, and that's kind of what they're doing in code, is they're actually creating a div called row, and that takes up from the very left to the very right. All of that space is now a row, and you can divvy that up, and it is divided into 12 sections. I'm not sure if they have a really good visual indicator of like the 12 sections on here, but that's okay. So imagine that it is 12 sections, and you can go ahead and set however much space between it that you want. And so you can set one column to take up 8 of those 12 sections, and one column to take up 4 of those 12 sections, and it will be exactly this size. Whatever size it is, it will fix it automatically based on how much that row and that column should be taking up width-wise. It's super powerful, and it's really, really useful, but also kind of confusing because they have it based on screen size. So you can see here that column, COL, then SM for small, and then the number that you're actually going to be using. So when you're setting up a row inside of Bootstrap, you say column, then you give it the size. And the sizes, let's see if I can actually find them on here. No. I've had to look this up a lot. So it's using their grid system. We come down here. These are the sizes that they have. So when we're using columns, you can think of it like this. XL is going to be for a screen wider than extra large. A large column is here, 992, then medium is for 768, and small is for 576. So on every row there are 12 columns, or there are 12 sizes, or 12 sections that you can fill up. And what we're going to do is I'm going to show you some examples of doing that. And the reason that they have based on small, medium, large, and extra large is because it is going to change based on the size of the screen. And that's where the real awesome power of it comes in. So I think the best way to do it would just be to actually show you, because it's not too hard to set up. So I'm going to say set up a class of row. Oops, one extra div. So we have a row, and that's all you need to start with. And then we're going to set up a couple different divs here with backgrounds. So we're going to say this class is going to have a column large 6, which means basically that this is going to take up half the screen when the screen is a large size. And we're going to do another one of those. And we'll do several examples here because this allows you to make really dynamic websites and gives you the size exactly what you want. Now I'm going to go ahead and add in a Bootstrap class called background dark, and then we'll do background primary just to show you different sizes. Now the only thing that is really well, there's a lot of confusing things. One of the confusing things when it comes to working with rows is that the height is basically 1 pixel unless you set some content in there that is not 1 pixel. So like if we come over here and we look at this, I don't know if you can see it on your screen, but there are 2 lines here, and these are our rows. But it's not very helpful because we want them to be wider. We need to be able to actually see what's inside of them. So I'm going to go ahead and say lorem, and this is an Emmet abbreviation, which I haven't talked about yet, but we'll get to. I'm going to lorem times 30. That's a lot. Emmet is basically a way of putting in specific chunks of code really quickly, and it's very powerful, but I don't use it very often because I don't use Visual Studio Code much, and it's not in my normal software. So I know a little bit about it, and I know that lorem times, let's go with 5. It allows you to just put in some filler text, just like that. You've probably seen lorem ipsum somewhere, and it's actually a website. If you ever wanted to just get filler text, you could go to, just type in lorem ipsum, and like the first website comes up, it's a generator for it, so you can, like, it tells you about it, and you can get generated ipsum. Yeah, it's really cool. Like, you can just get it whatever you want, and it's kind of cool. It looks like human speech, so you know, it fills it up. So we'll do that. Okay, I'm gonna do lorem times 5 again, and now our columns will be based on the amount of text that we have in them. So you can see here that this is perfectly half the screen, since there are 12 sections altogether, and we said each div to fill up 6, then it fills up half of it. Now if we come in and we start playing around with the size, now it auto comes down and it says, well, now that it's small, we don't have a large screen, so we're going to stack on each other, which is really, really cool. So it's not trying to put this text right next to each other because it would never fit. But if we open this up, you can see that it automatically fixes, grows larger, and as soon as it reaches that not large section, the 992, so right here, 992 pixels wide, if we go 1 less, it's going to then stack on itself. So let's go ahead and move that down to 991, and you can see that now they automatically stack based on the size of the screen. But you can change how they stack at different sizes, which is what you want to use Bootstrap for. It allows you to have total control over that. So how to do that is just put in more of the specific column sizes that you want. So we have column large 6. What we could do is say column medium 8, and this might look kind of weird, but we'll try it. And we'll do column medium 4. Column medium 4. So now, once the screen becomes medium size, which happens at 992 pixels, this is going to take up 3/4 of the screen, and this one will take up 1/4 of the screen. So you can see here that until it's medium, it's half and half. As soon as it becomes medium size, this takes up more of it, and this takes up less of it. Now, the columns, by default, the heights are all the exact same. So you can see that this background goes all the way to the bottom because this one continues going to the bottom. And this is where the power comes in. So we've got 12 sections within our row, and we can divvy them up based on screen size. And this is awesome. So we can come in here, and then by default, they stack when it becomes small, but you can also tell it to do that. So you can say at column small, well, you want to make them 12. And so then it'll happen automatically. Well, you won't see much of a change, but you get the idea there. Now, we can also come in here and we can add more. So we'll go ahead and do that. I'm going to go in and go ahead and copy this one. Actually, I'm just going to copy both of them and paste them in there twice. That's a little off, but that's okay. So we set it to be column large 2, which means that now we have all of these different columns, and if we get rid of that, you can see that each column takes up 2 sections out of the 12. And so you can very easily create a blog like this, have an image at the top, show it, and then some text underneath, and they would all be the same size. And then once you start changing the screen size, they all stack on each other perfectly. So that is awesome. And you can see here that, well, it's hard to tell because they stack on each other, but you can see that this space here, they all start at the same spot, same height, and everything. So that, I think, is really neat. And it allows you a lot of power and a lot of flexibility. Because you can come in here and you can change the column, the amount that it takes up based on the size of the screen with just changing the class. You don't need to come in here and type in a lot of JavaScript or CSS. You can just add classes and make it dynamic based on the screen size and based on the content that you have inside of there. So that is, in a nutshell, how the Bootstrap Flexbox system works. If you have any questions, definitely let me know, because, like I said, the first time that I was introduced to this, it was way over my head, and I did not understand it at all. And because of that, I didn't use it and wasted a lot of time doing things that I really didn't need to do. So keep that in mind, know that it's powerful, and kind of understand that you want to be using it a lot. There are other alternatives to Bootstrap, and they use different technologies. One of the newer ones that I'm hoping to sit down and actually devote some time to soon will be CSS Grid. So it's actually not Flexbox, it is a grid-based system using CSS inherently, so there's not an extra framework anywhere. It's just a new one that I don't know yet, but it's really cool. Keep that in mind. If you want to learn like the absolute latest technology, then Bootstrap wouldn't be what you want to be using. But that gives us a place to start. So what I think we'll do is have some, we'll have some divs take up different sections like this. Oh, and yeah, and if you have columns that don't stretch, the whole way, then there's leftover space. Just as a, that makes sense, because it's only taking up 4 right here. Now, it is really important that you have a row, because if you don't have row, it's not going to know that they're all supposed to be lined up horizontally like that, and so they're just going to stack. So keep that in mind. Another really cool thing that you can do if you like it, if you like the websites that don't use the left and right sides of the screen, is you can add a container, and that's kind of what it does automatically, is it keeps the left and right sides not as it keeps them blank. So if we add a container to this and we change this back to 6 and 6, you can see here that now this website, the entire presence of the website is going to be between these sides, between those 2 sections, because this is now, these are 12 sections, this is the whole row, and you've got a lot of extra space. Some people really like that, some websites are, do that, makes it easier to like read through. I don't think it's near as eye-catching, so I don't tend to use this, but you can also use Container Fluid if you want it to be, actually, I use Container Fluid fairly often, but I'm not entirely sure what it always does. Let's take a quick look. Container Fluid for a full width spanner, full width of the viewport. Okay, So container fluid is if you want to do an entire width, which is what I normally want to do. So you can keep that in there. Now, I think, well, we have a few minutes left. I think what I'll do is introduce you to some great places to get content for your website that are totally free, and then I'll download some of them, and then we'll start working on it next time. So, okay, free. Actually, okay, here we go. So Pixabay is a really great place to get completely free images. You can take them and it'll tell you that if you need to attribute anyone, it'll tell you if you can use it commercially, and most of the ones on here you can. They are totally free, and so you can just search for like technology, and you can see up here that some of them are sponsored by places that you have to pay for. So if I clicked on this one, it's going to take me to Shutterstock where I have to pay and, you know, blah blah blah. But all these ones down here, they are no attribution and free for commercial use. If I click on free download, I can grab the size that I want, and it's awesome. Pixabay is really, really great for so many different images, and they even have videos on here. You can search for photos, vector graphics, illustrations, and videos. So if I search for a tech video, you can see that this one is at 4K, and I could grab this completely for free, and I could throw this on the back of my website. Now, we're not going to get too much into like optimization of websites, but definitely keep in mind that when someone visits your website, they have to download everything that's on there, and not everyone is using fiber optics 1 gig speeds. So the rule of thumb is to use the smallest image size and video size possible. Like, I would never throw a 4K video background onto my website, because you can see here that it's 23 megabytes, 21 megabytes to download, and for some people that could take many seconds, if not minutes. And it's been found that like if someone tries to visit your website and they can't get into it within 6 seconds, like, they're out. They're not going to wait. Most people are not going to wait very long. So definitely make sure that your landing page, whatever you're doing, does not contain a lot of preloaded images that keep your user from getting into it. But keep that in mind, and keep in mind that this is an awesome place to get tons of free resources. So this is really cool, and that video is really trippy. Okay, but we're going to search just for photos, for technology, because we are cyberspace tech. So let's go ahead, and I really like this tablet one. A lot of other people have liked it too. I'm going to go ahead and grab this, and we're going to grab this smaller size. So 116 kilobytes, that's not too bad. We'll go ahead and download that, and download. So we'll save it, and you can support the authors of the images, which, if you've got the ability to do so, I would definitely recommend doing that. This looks like a really cool image, fiber optics. We'll grab that. And I don't need a large one of that, so I'm going to grab the smaller version. And we'll grab a few more. I mean, that's kind of cool. I like motherboard pictures. They're neat. We'll go ahead and download. Yeah, we'll do another small one of that. We don't want to make our website too difficult to get into. We want it to be loading as fast as possible. I'm really curious how hula dancers relate to a technology search, but I guess that's how it is. Here we go, robots. That's something that we could do, robots. We'll have that be a larger picture, because that'll be like one that we display prominently, and that'll be really cool. And I'll actually go ahead and here's related images. Let's see. Let's just search for robot. That's kind of weird. R2-D2. Not exactly what I'm looking for. Let's go back to just the text search. And we'll take this one, and this can be the last one that we're going to grab. So keep in mind that Pixabay is a really, really great resource if you're looking for content for your website, for really anything, because you don't have to attribute, you can use it commercially to make money off of. You can do with them whatever you want. That's what Creative Commons is for, and it's awesome. There are other websites out there. I'm trying to remember. There's one more that I was using that was really, really great. Unsplash. Unsplash is really, really awesome as well. So they are totally free photos as well, and it's another collection. So you'll probably find totally different photos on here. If you go and search for tech, like, yeah, these ones are not the ones that were showing up when we were looking there. So this one is also totally free for use, so we can grab it, although it doesn't tell me what size. But if, yeah, we can just grab that image. Oh, it's 5.4 megabytes, so we're not going to want one that's that large. So there might be a way to change the actual size. I don't know. Yeah, maybe not. But I guess if you want really high quality images that are like that, then you can do that. I don't want ones that are that large, but this is a really great website as well. So between Unsplash and Pixabay, you should be able to find all the content in the world for your website, your whatever it is that you're making. And Unsplash is really cool because they have a lot more that you can do. You can search for, what is that called? There's a really, Cinematograph. That's what it's called. There's a really cool thing called Cinematograph, and I'm not sure if these are, nah, that's not a Cinematograph. I really like Cinemagraphs. They're really, really pretty, and they're really neat. I wonder if any of them are on here. But this place, I believe this was the place I actually found some of the Cinemagraphs on. And I haven't been able to find other ones, but these are not them. So, whatever. That is okay. So, between Unsplash and Pixabay, keep both of those in mind, and you'll definitely be all set for what you need. So now we have, I think, all of the resources that I am going to need to start. So I'm going to go ahead and grab all of these, cut them out. And what I'm going to do is make a folder inside of here, and I'm going to label it Assets. And then inside of the folder, if I had multiple web pages, what I like to do is actually set each, make a new folder for each web page, and that way I know exactly where the images are. And it also makes it easier for updating later on if you label them. Like if you have an About Us page and you label the photo like Aaron profile picture, all someone has to do, even not you as the web developer, is upload a new picture labeled Aaron profile picture, and then it will replace that one that's in there. And it makes it really easy to update by anybody, which is really cool. So I'm going to go ahead and we'll keep them named like this. That's fine. Some of these are really cool pictures that we have to work with. And let's go ahead and just throw some of them in there because I'm excited to see what they look like. So on this one, I'm going to go ahead and delete all the text that we put in there. And I'm just going to put in an image. So one of the things that you can have it do is come over here to the Explorer, and you can see that now all of our assets, all of our images are actually inside of here because we're actually inside of this folder. So I can drag and drop this image, and okay, well I can see the image if I do that, but what I wanted to do was right click on it and copy path, I believe it is. So now I have, that's not what I want at all. Okay, I'm used to copying, or like dragging and dropping. So here is the relative path for what we want to do. So what I'm going to do is delete that, but keep it in my section. I'm going to put in an image. I'm going to say source equals And then from here we can actually, I guess, just select it. It's easier. Yeah, let's just do that. So we can select our source, and now we have our robot. Now, by default, all the images that you put in there, they're going to take up max height, max width, and sometimes that's okay, especially if you have actually taken the time to put all your images to be the exact same size that you're going to want. But sometimes that's not going to be what you want. So you can see here that now we have this image, and our background dark is still over here, and our image doesn't take that up entirely. So there's settings that we can set up inside of CSS to make the image either full width, full height, do auto. We can have it only fill up a certain section, and we can also say what size it should be. But a lot of times, if you're actually going to go in and manually set the width and height of an image to be smaller, then you probably just want to resize the image so that it's easier for people to download in the first place and get to. So this is a really cool image. I think we'll keep this as like the starting image, and then we'll put in like some text over here, and we'll do just one long div there that people can look at. So I'm going to go ahead and use a class inside of here, a Bootstrap class that says width auto. And let's see if that does... No, that's not what I want. Let's try width 100. Okay, so what this does, width 100 makes it 100% wide, and the height is cut off a little bit. You can see it's a little smaller now. We still have these background dark inside of here, and we are going to use that because we're actually going to come inside of here and change this background to dark. And then this whole section is going to be kind of a darker section, which is fine. I'm not going to want this text in here, but we are still going to want a column that is large 6. We're going to keep, I think we'll just go straight to column small 12 is what we'll do there. Okay. Now, inside of this div, what's cool is that we have in large, we have 6 sections to work with, and in small, we have 12 sections. So we can actually make another row entirely if we wanted to, and then we could come in here and set up more columns. So you can have these be nested as much as you want, which is great. And I don't think we need to do that for this one specifically, but I think we will later on. So the first thing we're going to do is add in a heading. So our heading... it's going to be something eye-catching. So the future is now. And then underneath that, we'll add a paragraph. And because I don't actually want to type a lot, I'm just going to put in lorem times 3. So that gives us 3 lines of lorem ipsum. And there we go. So that is that. We're going to go ahead and add a class to this h1. So we're going to add a class called text white, and we're going to add the same class to the paragraph, and you can imagine that it just turns the text white. And we could do that through CSS very easily, but by adding this class in here, we can see it, and it's easier than going in and making a new class all for ourselves. So we have that. Now, I want this heading to be larger. I also want it to be centered. So to be centered, you can use a Bootstrap class called text center, and that does exactly what it sounds like. Very simple and easy. Now, I want it to be a lot bigger, so I'm gonna go into our CSS that we have, and I don't think we're using any of these anymore, so I'm gonna delete that, and we're gonna actually start using these. So for heading 1, I'm gonna want the font size to be there. Okay, there are a couple different ways to do font sizes. You can do pixels. So if we do 75 pixels, now it's a lot larger. I like that. It's much more eye-catching. But you can also do something called EM and REM, which I'm not exactly sure what they stand for, but they are more scalable sizes for what you want to do. So I'm actually going to use 5EM, and you can see that that's right about the same size. And if we come in here and we change it, I believe that the text actually it doesn't seem to shift much. Some of them, let's see. No, we won't worry about that right now. But what I do want to do is make this image take up the entire left side of the screen. So the image doesn't have any margin or padding, so that's fine. So what we need to do is, there's padding on our row, so if I remove the padding, there we go. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the padding that is on this column right here, and the way we can do that is through Bootstrap. So we already adjusted margin, and you saw that there's a way to adjust it automatically, and there's a way to adjust padding through classes as well. So it's P for padding, and then you have all of the options for top, left, right, and bottom. So if I want to adjust padding left, I say PL, and unfortunately it's not showing up through here, so I'm going to check out some of the extensions and see if I can get that working properly. But we've got PL, and then you put a dash, and you have options between 0 and 5. So that's 0 padding all the way up to 5, which I think is like, let's see, if I put PL 5, you can see that that's the amount of padding that you then get. So it is 48 pixels of padding on the left. But if we say 0, it gives us 0, which is awesome. So then that is better. So that takes up the whole section. But on small, okay, you can still see that there's padding on the right. And the padding on the right only comes in when it's on small. So we want to, so we can actually say padding right small 0, and that would work. You can come in here and see that it did nothing. Okay, so I must have that wrong. So let's go ahead and do padding right 0, and just in general, now that is has no padding on the sides, which is what I want. For the text, I think it's really good to have a little bit of padding on there, because otherwise it's kind of hard to read if the text is pure side to side on the screen. So a little bit of padding all around it is really, really good. I'm going to leave that just the way it is. But I do want this image to be a little bit larger. So I'm going to say the width is 100. I'm actually going to give the height 100 and see. Let's take off width. Okay. So that gives it the height. So before we were saying we want the width of the image to be 100% and then cut off everything below. Now we're saying make the height 100 and it's automatically going to fill in the rest of the way. And I think that looks a lot better because when we come in here, now the width is not working properly. So we need to come in and check that out. So let's go ahead and say width auto and see what that does for us. It does nothing. So let's go ahead and say width small 100. Now, I'm not even sure that's an actual class because they don't show up inside of here. Okay, so we want it to be larger on a full screen image like this. That makes sense. But when we go into mobile, we only want it to be a lot smaller. We don't want the height to be 100 without the width, because it just takes up the whole thing. So I'm going to go ahead and look up width auto inside of here and see if they have anything. So they don't have anything there. They have margins. Okay. Sizing. Okay, here we go. So here's sizing classes that you can read about. Here's width, here's height, max width 100%, max height. So they don't seem to have anything based on the sizes, which is unfortunate because that's kind of exactly what I'm looking for. Is if it's, you know, small screen, then make the width 100% and the height auto. So I guess, oh. Alright, I'm going to introduce one more thing and then I'm going to be done because I was supposed to be done at 12:30. So a little bit over time, but I'm going to show you something really, really powerful and kind of how Bootstrap actually works. So we're going to do something called a media query. So let's look that up to show you exactly what it is. So, okay. Media queries are actually how Bootstrap is working itself. So it is taking the sizes of, well, like I showed you over here, the sizing. That's not it. It's taking the sizes of the screens that are 992 pixels, and then it changes to medium, and then large, extra large, all of those different things, and it's doing it with media queries and probably some JavaScript as well. But we can write our own media queries that say when the width of our screen is a certain amount, then we can say change the classes, change the attributes of something to something else. So there's different kinds of media queries, but you can see here that this is kind of an idea of columns right here, and W3 Schools actually has their own library that you can plug in. Let's see, what is it called? W3.css. So they have their own entire framework that you can plug in and use instead of Bootstrap if you wanted to, and it's pretty good. I've used it before. But all we need to do now is take this media. So I'm going to copy this media query. So we're saying media only on the screen, and when the max width is 600 pixels, we're changing the body. So the body is like, that main thing inside of our class. So the body, everything that we see, is changing the background of that to be blue, which that's not what we're going to do. So instead, I want to say Bootstrap for grid sizes. I want to look exactly when they change it to small. Oh, that's the wrong one. When they change it to small is at, let's see, 540 or 576 pixels. So we're going to say max width of 576 pixels. And we're going to change this image, and we're going to change it so that its height is going to be auto and its width is going to be 100%. So we can do that by giving this image an ID called, we'll just call it robot. So we're going to get rid of this body, and inside of this media query you can have you can change as many things as you want. All we're going to do is change robot, and we're going to change it so that width is 100% and its height is auto. Okay, let's see if that works. So here it's height 100%, and when we come in here, the width is now 100% and the height is auto. And that's exactly what we want. That is media queries, and that is really powerful. So we can use them ourselves, but you also know that that's how Bootstrap is working. That's kind of what they're doing. So now we have this, and we can change this if we wanted to. We can come in here and we can say, let's say 50%. If we change that to, I'm not sure that'll work with the height being at 100%, because that's kind of how that works. But if we change this to height auto, or to width auto, then we'd have the exact same problem that we had before. So what you can do is actually change, like, put it in pixels if you want it to be larger. So here's 300 pixels. Let's see. Well, the height won't work because, oh, we have height 100 on there. So the height 100% is still a valid class on there. But yeah, I think we'll keep it like that. So we don't actually have to do anything with the height. We just have to add in that width. And the width is only present when it's a certain size. And that's great. So, okay. That's exactly what I want us to end with right there. I think that's a really good start. That's, to me, that's kind of eye-catching and draws me in. So we will end there, and thank you everyone for joining me. If you have any specific questions about stuff I covered this time, then please let me know. And as always, have fun making great websites, and I will talk to you later.